I really struggled to choose my play of the day today because there were two very exciting games. But in the end, I went for Vachier-Lagrave against Etienne Bacrot, simply because we've already had two games of Richard Rapport. So let's see what happened in this game. Vachier-Lagrave with the white pieces, and it started as an English opening and a very standard opening variation actually. So let's get to the critical position. Both sides fianchetto. Of course, it's kind of a reversed close Sicilian. Now here's the first important position. Now there are a couple of strategies that white can employ here. Perhaps rook b1 with the idea of pushing the pawn to b5. This is the most standard way for white to play, or you can play bishop g5 and exchange on f6. But here Vachier-Lagrave played b3, and this was actually played by Kramnik earlier in the year against Vachier-Lagrave, so he obviously thought this was worth trying out himself. But it makes a slightly odd impression, this move, because this is generally where you want the pawn. It's a solid move, preparing the bishop move to a3, but I was just discussing this move with Artur Yusupov, German Grandmaster, former Russian Grandmaster, just before this recording, and he said, I don't understand b3. It looks like a waste of a tempo. White wants to put the pawn on b5. But of course we should say this very quietly as Kramnik played this move. We should respect the great man. So in Kramnik against Vachier-Lagrave, knight d4 was played, and this certainly turned out quite well for white, because in that game, I think here you can see the bishop looks at this now slightly weak pawn on d6, and Kramnik was a bit better in that game and, well, had winning chances. But instead of this, Bacrot played in a more direct way, with his standard attacking plan of advancing the f-pawn. So let's see how the game went. Bishop a3. So the pawn advances, rook c1 gets off this diagonal, avoids any tricks. f4. So f4 prepares perhaps to bring the bishop in the game. Sometimes it comes to e6, and then queen d7, and then bishop h3 to exchange off the bishop on g2. And of course, the file is opening up for the rook as well, so very standard, and this is a very aggressive way for black to play the position. So now b4, well, you can understand what I mean when I say, or when Yusupov says, this looks like a waste of a tempo, so the pawn has come to b4 in two moves. And now, well, Bacrot played bishop h6, which is a very risky move indeed, but it looks more sensible just to play a6 to forestall this idea of b5, because obviously that would open up the a file. I think this looks like a much better move than the game actually. Vachier-Lagrave said he would play like this and then escape the pin with queen b3, but after this I quite like black's position actually, because, well, b5 still isn't really a very good idea because the a file will open. There's nice pressure on e3, and the king can just move to h8, step out of the way of this diagonal, and I feel that black has a reasonable position there. Okay, white shouldn't be worse, but I don't think black is worse either. Okay, let's go to the game continuation, where Bacrot played this quite risky move, bishop h6. Why is it risky? Well, he's setting up a threat here, but it isn't much of a threat, because after this, Vachier-Lagrave simply ignored the threats to the rook and, well, started to create threats with his bishop on this diagonal. You can see, this diagonal is about to open up. And here Bacrot took the rook. He thought his position was really bad and thought, well, he may as well grab some material. This sacrifice is very interesting, and this is possible. Now king h2 probably isn't very good. Sorry, probably that might be the way for white to play it. But this is a very tricky position, actually. I mean, maybe there's some way for black to play this. Maybe after this, because I think this isn't very good. Queen takes, the knight's on prise. If bishop takes, then this very nice move, queen f8, comes to h6, and this is terribly strong. But if we go back after the check, maybe king h1 is better. I mean, this is, you can see how complex this is. And after taking, okay, in this position, because the king is on h1, okay, there's still this threat of queen h6, but now the knight comes back to h2. But, you know, I think black has some compensation here. You know, maybe knight f5 coming, maybe a rook f8 coming. This is very unclear. Certainly worth a shot. But Bacrot took the rook. He grabbed the exchange. He didn't like his position. And you can see that there's a threat to the pawn on e5. So black had to exchange. And now, although white is a clear exchange down, these open diagonals are really, really dangerous. This is superb compensation for white, actually. Let me see, knight g7 played, and now c5. So these diagonals are starting to open, and I think it's critical that there's no dark-squared bishop to challenge this bishop on this diagonal, and it's such an easy position for white to play. So everything is opening, and of course it's not easy to bring this bishop into the game because this diagonal is open as well. And here Vachier-Lagrave played bishop takes c5, but he said that he saw that knight c6 was probably a winning move, and he gave after the game a fascinating variation. Let's have a look. So if knight takes, then, well, this looks absolutely fantastic for white. White's pieces are just crawling into the position. You know, you can see this is going, and this is happening as well. So queen f8, and now rook d8, knight e8. Black is just about surviving, and now a very cool move, bishop takes. Now, with threats of knight d5 and bishop d5. White is a whole rook down here, but black can scarcely move anything at all. You know, the best he has is probably to do this. And now this, and white must be winning here with his pawn on b7. These two fantastic bishops. The knight can still enter the game. Must be winning. But in the game, Vachier-Lagrave said he saw that, but wanted something simpler. So he just took, and white's position still is absolutely superb. Now maybe he should just advance with e4 and just roll down the board. Still looks extremely unpleasant for black. He played instead queen e3, also looks quite good. But you can see he's looking for simpler solutions than the complexity of those variations we've looked at. And here he played bishop d5, but he said after the game that he should probably just play e4 and start rolling the pawns down the board. And that does indeed look stronger. Still not so clear after this. But basically this is, well, as he said, 2 tempi up on the game. So white is still a pawn down, but with 2 bishops raking across the board, looks very good indeed, and black hasn't really developed properly. So the game continuation, bishop d5, and after this, black is starting to find his feet, because after this, if the knight retreats, then knight e7, and you can see that the knights are flying out, and well, even this isn't so clear, but black has some activity, and Vachier-Lagrave thought he better compromise and exchange off some pieces. He was running slightly short of time. Such a complex position with so much to calculate, that can happen very, very easily. And here he started trading. Basically, he knew he was heading towards a draw. There's a few tricks, but he realized that black was getting out, but he felt that he'd made enough blunders in this game, and we're now heading towards a draw. And after this, well, we simplify into a rook and pawn ending. And here, well, they didn't even bother playing this one on with just 2 against 1. It's a very easy draw for black. Well, I mean, I thought there was a very interesting sacrifice, but Vachier-Lagrave couldn't quite clinch it. In the other 2 games today, there were 2 draws, but nevertheless some very interesting fighting chess. So do join me tomorrow for round 4. Usual starting time, games start at 2 o'clock. My commentary starts at 2:30. Thanks for watching.